Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EDI Catalyst, where we will explore topics of equity, diversity, inclusion, and indigeneity in STEM. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Albright, and I'm excited to share with you this new initiative spearheaded by the Carbon to Metal Coating Institute at Queen's University. Here at C2MCI, we are committed to advancing EDII in STEM fields by fostering a culture of respect, inclusion, excellence among our researchers, students, and partners. In this podcast, we will feature guest speakers from diverse backgrounds and perspectives to share about their lived experiences, as well as to help provide resources and tips on how to create more inclusive and equitable environments. Through this, we hope to inspire you to become a catalyst for change in your own communities and workplaces. A few notes before we get started. There will be time at the end of the session, as usual, for members of our live audience to ask a couple of questions, so please remain muted until then. You can put any comments and questions in the chat as well, and we will get to them at the end. The theme for today, in honor of Black History Month, is celebrating Black excellence in STEM and promoting chemistry to today's youth. And I'm honored and excited to have with us today Dr. Andre Isaacs for today's discussion. He is an associate professor at the College of the Holy Cross in the Department of Chemistry, and is also a popular TikTok influencer with over 500,000 followers. And we're going to get into some details about that later on. But first, welcome, Andre. I'm so excited to have you. How are you doing today?
Great, thanks for the invitation. I'm doing pretty well. It was supposed to be a snow day, but it didn't materialize, but still at home.
Yes, it's a nice sunny day here in Kingston, Ontario. So why don't we start off? Can you tell us a little about who you are and your journey in STEM so far and where you are now in your career?
Yeah, so when people ask who I am, it's really a tough question to answer directly because I think of myself as someone who wears so many hats and has so many identities. But I am from Jamaica. Kingston, Jamaica is where I was born and raised, and I moved to the US to study, and I became a chemist. So I like to think of myself as a Black queer chemist from Jamaica, who does organic chemistry research and educates undergraduates in that area.
Very nice, very nice. So, what do you consider one of your biggest achievements or one of the key highlights in your journey in STEM that you're most proud of
Yeah, so it's hard to pick one, and I
Hmm,
decided I'll
you
just
can
tell
give more
you.
than one if you want.
Right, I can. There's so many. Well, honestly, looking back on my life, I really have been extremely proud of my accomplishment in terms of my academic accomplishment. In order, thinking about getting a PhD, as someone who came from where I grew up in itself is for me like a significant accomplishment. Looking at my family and what they've done in their journeys. For me, like getting a PhD in chemistry is an amazing accomplishment, and I am always surprised sometimes and always in awe of that accomplishment. But additionally, I would say my ability to really excite young folks to study chemistry or science in general has been something that I'm really proud of. As you can see, and we'll talk about, I'm sure, I foray into social media.
Yes, I agree. I think you've had a lot of acknowledgement in the recent years, especially about your promotion of chemistry to the youth. So you talked a little bit there about it's a I think we all know it's a big accomplishment, especially for chemistry. It's not easy. Often people say they look at me when I tell them that I've gotten a PhD in chemistry. They're like, "Oh, whoa!" So I think it is a big deal and a hard thing to do. What for you got you interested in chemistry, and what kind of drove you on that path?
Yeah, so I was always interested in chemistry. I would say the sciences. So I grew up in Jamaica, and it's a, British education system. You kind of have to decide fairly early what track you want to be on, right? So I remember being in ninth grade having to decide if I wanted to study the sciences or business, and ended up in the sciences because for multiple reasons. One, I enjoyed doing it, but two, there was that family pressure, right? So my grandfather always wanted a doctor in the family. All of his kids had failed him in pursuing that. So he moved on to the grandkids, and I was next in line. So doing the sciences was both an interest of mine, but also kind of an expectation from
Mm,
family. And so that's kind of when I went into the sciences in 10th grade and kept studying it then, but just really fell in love with chemistry in particular, and math. So I kind of struggled in chemistry a bit. Initially, and with the help of my uncle, really started excelling in chemistry. And it was just nonstop from there, just really fell in love with chemistry and kept doing it in college, clearly, and went on to graduate studies and so forth. So, yeah,
And now you share that passion with your students. I think that's great.
I try to. Yes.
What were some of the challenges you faced during your maybe PhD journey as like an immigrant in the US, and what helped you kind of overcome those challenges?
Oh yeah, there are a number of challenges. I would say they started from college. Well,
Mm,
number one, the weather. Being an immigrant from Jamaica, living in frigid Massachusetts, was difficult. The food, we always joked that the food needed some more seasoning. It wasn't spicy enough for my taste. But also really just the cultural differences in how people, like existed in a space and the expectations people often had for people of color in
mm,
scientific spaces. And so, you could tell, nobody really wanted to necessarily study with you, didn't know what it didn't expect you to be capable. It was obviously obvious that, some faculty members, had seen a lot of students of color come through their classes, some unsuccessfully. And so, many internalized that kind of, like pattern and expected, most of the students to follow
mm,
that path. And so it was a little tricky to navigate that and to really challenge people's expectations of what I would produce. And for me, that became kind of a goal, is to really prove the doubters wrong, that I could actually do science and do it well. So that was a big challenge, really just navigating the I would say the expectations people had for immigrant students and
mm,
students of color. Um, Graduate school was actually a little bit different because I got in because I did pretty well in college, and so everyone had high expectations, I would say, for all the students. But in graduate school, my challenges switched, I would say, to really dealing with my identity as a queer person, STEM. I came out as queer in my graduate program, and that was really tough, primarily with navigating relationships with my family members who, for me growing up in Kingston, Jamaica, which is a fairly religious country, I had some challenges there, maintaining relationships, long-standing relationships with family members, and navigating the different dynamics that came out of me coming out. And so that really, put a strain on my graduate studies, and impacted me a bit. However, was able to figure it out thanks to now a great mentor, my PhD advisor, who, gave me some space to focus more on building, healthy relationships with those around me who supported me, and then jumping back into my research once I was comfortable. So those are some challenges, and it's very I was very lucky, I should say. I had really good mentors and people to support me. But, one thing I've recognized after talking to a number of people, in our community, that, that's not the same for everyone, right? The
yeah.
support isn't always there. And so I try to do that as best as I can, in my courses, in my modeling like support for my students, but also modeling success for those online who might not think that they will be successful. And, so if they see someone like me navigate those challenges, then they too might be able to do that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. I think you're touching on some key things that we've discussed in previous podcasts as well, is the mentorship and support systems really impact students. And I think that's important to know from the student's perspective, but also then now a lot of our audience are early career PhD students are going to go on and maybe become professors. it's important to know the impact that you as a person can have on other people. And it's worth looking into different supports and ways that you can do to be supportive to your students and colleagues and so forth.
Yeah, I agree. And it doesn't take much, right? I think
Yeah.
just like sometimes just being visible and just like giving someone a smile is
Yeah, and
all
I
the
think representation too kind of touches on that too. So you being determined and being successful and being out there now and being a big promoter for underrepresented groups and promoting your success as well is really important. I think that was a key thing in my journey too, is seeing other women in STEM really helped get me to where I am today. So what do you think? I'm sure a lot of those challenges are still challenges faced by students today, but do you think there's any other more specific challenges that you're seeing your students face today? And this could be science students, but I know you also mentor more than just science students as well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really tough for this generation. Like, I've had a lot of experience, working with Gen Z and getting really becoming aware of the challenges and some of their fears and concerns. And one real challenge for many young people nowadays is there is really not much of a promise for a bright future for them. They don't see the end of the tunnel for all the work they need to put in. They don't see the white picket fence and the house and the job and the kids and the happy life that was promised, the American dream for those of us in America, right?
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more unattainable when you think about the economy and housing prices and
Hmm.
compensation that's not, increasing with inflation. And so students are very depressed about the future, right? And so I think that impacts their learning. A lot of students, I think, are like, what's the point of learning? I'm never going to get a job that's going to allow me to live a decent life. So it's very hard. And I think finding joy in learning is what I am trying to give to my students. So like, how can they find joy in the learning process and less so in the promise of a future that'll come from doing all the work they're doing in the class. And so there's some real fears that students have, and there's a lot of lack of resilience, I think, as a result.
Mm.
And of course, that the resilience is needed for students to overcome the challenges, and also to really thrive in the classroom when they're working on problems that they can't get right, and they need to go at it and at it. And many of them are like, well, we're never going to get a job, so why do I need to learn skills all their reaction? Who cares? So finding ways to excite students about learning that's kind of decoupled from the promise of a house at the end of this, like degree is a way that I've been trying to help them navigate the current situation they find themselves
Yeah, yeah, I think that is a challenge that as a recent grad, I feel that a lot. It's
in.
the unknown, and I'm going to put it all in this work, and where is it going to go? It can be very daunting for students. So I think you started to touch on, can you share a little more about some of the strategies or initiatives that you've implemented in like your teaching or in your lab to try to help the students through?
Yeah. So in addition, I would say to the students like being so concerned about their future, I think a lot of students just don't see themselves in science.
Mm.
They're not represented, when they look at scientists, they don't see themselves in science. Um and also there are a lot of negative opinions about scientists in our media, much of which is like, kind of perpetuated by politicians who kind of have their own agendas. And so for me, what I've been trying to do a lot of is to really help students to see themselves in science, and to find connections to their own lived experiences with what they're learning. So, for example, representation of like chemists of color is something that I do in my
Mm.
class constantly. I try to tie in lectures with scientists of color who've made contributions in those specific fields. I love to talk about Alice Ball and Alma Hayden, people who've done really awesome work in chemistry and beyond. And for queer students as well, who are actually, there's not a lot of data on queer people of science or in science
Mm,
because, we don't collect that information.
yeah.
Sexual identity information is not really easily accessible. And so kind of, finding ways to make queer students also feel as if they see themselves in science. So connecting science to their daily lives. And I talk about cis and trans isomers, that's when I talk about cis gendered identities and talking about non-binary identities with the wave particle duality of light, and just finding ways to highlight also queer scientists, that students can see themselves in the, but also making it fun and exciting. So, having students see science in their in at home, finding items at home, household products that they can then look up the structures and do chemistry with, and relate it to like synthesis in organic chemistry or functional groups. Um, but also just having fun, like dancing, right? So we
Mm.
do a lot of dancing sometimes, we learn reaction mechanisms by doing dances. We do the Wittig dance, when we do the Wittig reaction. I have the Diels-Alder one planned.
Oh my goodness.
And just finding ways to incorporate their own culture with learning. I think that's what we need to start doing to make it
Yeah.
more fun and
And
exciting
I,
for.
I think that leads nicely into your TikTok journey because TikTok, people go to well, I don't know why people go to TikTok, but I could consider TikTok as a fun place most times and to go and get a break from the hard work in the lab and so forth. Can you tell us a little bit about how your TikTok journey started and kind of what the content is for anyone who might not know what TikTok is and how it's
Yeah,
kind of evolved?
so
Yeah.
I mean, I think many of us have social media platforms, right? There's
Yep.
Twitter, there's Instagram, there is, you name it. And TikTok for me was a brand new social media platform back in 2020. And I really just went on it because as an extrovert, and I was stuck at home in this pandemic.
Mm.
We couldn't go outside, you couldn't go back to work, and I had to teach online. And I just needed a release or the way to interact with people, and so I joined the social media platform and started just using it, to watch videos, take a break, as you also pointed out. And my friends were like, you should make some videos. I think this would be perfect for your personality. I was like, I can't make these videos. They're too complex. So, but of course, I like a challenge. So I started watching YouTube tutorials on how to make videos and do transitions and started making some. But it really wasn't until I went back to campus in the fall of 2020 and made one with a student of mine who was like, I saw your video, we should collaborate and do something together. And we made this dance video and it blew up, it took off. And I think, I didn't anticipate that because I was just doing it for fun. But what I learned from the comments was that for a lot of people, it was really something they were yearning. They were excited, excited to see diversity in ways they never anticipated in STEM, right? They're excited to see a Black person in STEM, a queer person in STEM, an immigrant in STEM, someone who's authentically themselves in STEM, joy in STEM, right? Positive faculty-student interactions in STEM, right? So I quickly
Yeah.
recognized that a lot of the things my videos showcased were things that people were yearning or people thought wasn't possible or didn't exist in STEM. And so from then on, I just really started, leaning into that and revealing more of myself and how I interact with my students and my own journey and what I do as a scientist, right? To kind of recreate or repaint a new picture of what a scientist could be. And so that's what happened and how it started and how it's continuing.
Yeah, and for any of our listeners today, if you haven't checked out any of Dr. Isaac's TikToks, you really should. They're really fun. They're educational. It's all the things you're saying. You're showing representation of your diversity and being your authentic self. But then you also have some that are more educational, where you're talking about certain chemicals that you might have in your home. My personal favorite, I think it was right before Christmas, you were doing some for people prepping for their exams and saying about how people remember lyrics to music, but can't remember a mechanism. So then you did a song along for I believe it was an LDA bass
Yes.
reaction. And I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I don't think I'll ever forget that now. The LDA is a strong bass
Yes.
depronates.
Well, there you go.
Go
I'm
on.
glad.
I
And that
won't
really
do the
just
song. People will have to go check it themselves.
and that really just came out of, honestly, like frustration. I'm like, okay, why can't you all notice? And they've all learned this song and that just came out a few days ago.
Yeah.
So well, maybe music lyrics is the way to go.
Yeah, so it's really you have some really inventive ways. What has the impact had of your TikToks on your lab or teaching? Because I know you said you have your students have gotten involved with them.
Yeah, so I would say the first thing it's done, it's really deepened or strengthened, I should say, the relationships and the bonds I've made with students. I think they see me differently, right? They see me as someone who's supportive, but someone who's going to meet them where they are, right? Which is like their lingo that they use and also aspects of their culture that's clearly showcased on different social media platforms. It's really strengthened and deepened the bonds that I have with my students. But it's also brought, as I mentioned earlier, some joy to the science, right? So a lot of people are now more excited to do chemistry. I've had a lot of students want to apply to do chemistry research. My classes are a little too full. We actually hit a record high in our department this semester, students who want to take organic chemistry. We have
That's amazing.
250 students taking organic chemistry, and we only have 800 students per class. So to think,
Wow.
that we have those numbers, it's really, really pretty awesome to see the interest, but also the enthusiasm from students
Mm.
to do science, to say like, hey, this looks fun, and I think I can do it. So that's been some of the impact, but also nationally, like a lot of, other faculty from other institutions have really reached out to me and said, hey, I really like your vulnerability, and your authenticity is making me rethink the ways in which I engage with my students, and maybe I should too be reveal a little bit more of myself to better connect with students, and also adopt some of the pedagogy that I showcase on my social media platform. So I've been very, like it's been very rewarding, I would say, to see the positive responses um to the work that I do. Although it's not all positive. I do have some
Yeah.
haters out there.
That's what I was gonna kind of get to next. So you come in the world, you seem very, I think you have to have a level of confidence in order to put yourself out there in general on a day-to-day basis. But then that's exemplif or kind of even increased even more when you're in public on social media because there is that negative side. There's haters everywhere. So where do you find the confidence for yourself, or what helped you build that confidence to where you are now today? And what kind of advice would you give to our students to help encourage
Yeah,
them?
I think you hit the nail on the head. You kind of, to do this kind of work, to be this visible, I think you have to be confident and you have to be committed to doing it, right?
Yep.
Because you're gonna get pushback from people. I've gotten a lot of pushback. I've gotten death threats. I've gotten like bomb threats. I mean, it's
Oh my
crazy.
gosh.
Um, so there are a lot of people who, do not want to see representation of people of color, of queer folks in STEM, or, on a national stage. And so, the people are very vocal about that. But what keeps me going is really the emails I get from high school students, from college students, professors, grad students, postdocs who thanked me for being visible and telling me that, hey, a high school kid emailed me and said, listen, I've always wanted to do science, but I never thought as a queer person of color that there was a place for me in science. But seeing you has made me committed to and doing a chemistry degree in college. And like just random people just keep updating me like, Professor, I just want to let you know that I got a 95 on my exam. And just watching your video 2 nights ago was what kept me going to study for this. And I get hundreds of these like communications unsolicited. And so whenever I feel, like there's some pushback or I get pushback, I just read the comment sections of my videos and look at the emails that people have sent me and realize that the impact is overwhelms the negative energy out there.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I think you having a significant impact on not only just the scientists, but the non-scientists as well. And I think that's really great that you're seeing feedback from people that you're getting people interested in science. So we're getting close to our end of the time here. So I have like two final questions. So what was your favorite TikTok that you've done and why? And then I would like you to kind of leave our viewers with like a final message. And then we'll switch to a couple of questions from the audience so the audience can start thinking about their questions.
Sure. Favorite video. Oh my God, I've made so many. But I think so my favorite video ever is really the one that I have with my two female students who are graduating. And we made a video of me showcasing their journey with me. The video is literally 10 seconds, but it encompasses them in the classroom with me, to them being in the lab with me, to them now graduating. And I actually just posted a video update of them that they're both in medical school. So it was really just this like journey showcasing that you can walk with your students, and walking with them along the way is really important to their success, and to success of underrepresented folks, particular in this case, particularly women.
Yeah.
Um, and the final message is be who you are. I think it's really hard for us oftentimes to be our full selves, because we think about the pushback we're going to get, and we think about the hate we could get. But you can inspire so many people by just living authentically. And I have always said those words, that be yourself, be who you are. But I didn't really understand what that meant until I started getting feedback from just being myself on social media. And so it's really powerful how someone else can just see you being your authentic self daily, and that inspires them to also find their best. So that's my advice.
Thank you so much, Andre. So we will open it up for a couple of questions from the audience. I see Kathy is eagerly has her hand raised. So
Yes.
Kathy, if
Hi,
you'd
Sorry.
like to
Kathy.
I should let the students do it first, but I'm too enthusiastic. Andre, thank you so much for your inspiration here. I really appreciate, as you say, about being authentic. There's so much non-authenticity, and I think people can really tell. So thank you for putting yourself out there and putting yourself at risk when you do that. And I guess my question is also, how are you? Does your institution support you for this? Because we often see underrepresented groups doing more work
Yes.
and takes away from other things. So are you getting credit
That's a
for
great
that?
question. So my institution does support me fully. I know they have my back. But no, I don't get additional credit for doing this work. And you are right. I think a lot of times the labor of supporting students, and being on committees and all that, all that type of labor, it often goes unrewarded.
Yeah,
And it falls pretty much on the backs of people of color and women generally. So there's a lot of burnout as a result. So I think one of the things we have to start doing is to either compensate people for this labor or value it, when you think about promotion
absolutely.
and merit based
Yeah, absolutely.
awards.
They're so lucky to have you. I mean, that's incredible in terms of bringing students in. And one thing we're doing in Canada, we're not doing nearly enough, but in our annual grant review, we have a section on diversity that's ranked very highly. And so the question is, what are you doing? And this is a way of rewarding those who are making the efforts, in terms of their evaluation of their research, because it's impactful for research too. But
Yes, agreed.
yeah, thank you so much. I'll let anybody
Thank you
else.
for having me.
Thank you.
Happy to take more questions.
Yeah, I think we have time for another question. Any students? It could be question or comment, I should say too. It doesn't have to be anybody. You can raise your hand or put it in the chat. Everyone's shy today.
I have one more then.
Well,
Okay.
let's hear it.
I'll keep going. So what is your best advice for recruiting, strategies, right? In terms of, I want to do better for recruiting people of color. I don't think we're doing as well as we can. And especially if we look at the demographic, we're not hitting that. Any thoughts? I
Yeah,
mean, it's a big problem, but
it's a challenging question, right? Because I think one thing is students have to feel as if they'll be entering a supportive environment, and that has to be demonstrated. Like, what are the support systems? Who's been successful from that institution as a student of color needs to be highlighted, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a multi-pronged approach. I also think you have to find students from the institutions, you know, that are producing students of color as well. Like, you can't just put a big call out, apply for schools. You have to need to target institutions and say, tell your students to apply here. We have a great program. These are the ways we're going to support them. And so we see that in hiring, right? Everyone sends their hiring to CNE News, and that's it, right? So are we going to the places where students of color are, right, to let them know that we are going to value, or we value you,
Right.
so come to us. So go into institutions, HBCUs in the US, right, historically Black colleges and universities that have students who want to go into PhD programs, to do recruiting directly.
Great idea. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Just one small question.
Yeah.
Hi, so my name's Jyoti. I'm at the Institute as well. Just a quick question. I think, first of all, thank you so much. This was really lovely to listen to you and your experiences. Just what kind of challenges do you still face in terms of microaggressions? Because I know you're doing very well. I think you provided some really excellent ideas, but I'd like to hear if you're still feeling some of these aggressions and what they are and how you cope.
That's a great question. They are there, and there are plenty. I think some of the microaggressions include, well, you know, you spend your time with students, you could publish more, right? That's one of the microaggressions that I definitely get from people in the community, and oftentimes I think, well, that's exactly what's wrong with our field, is we prioritize publications over our students' mental health, right? So that's one I get. The other microaggression is literally how I dress, right? I've had people say, you don't dress professionally. I mean, I'm wearing my shirt and tie right now, but you know, I don't always dress like this. And so you know, there that microaggression, but and there are others, you know, like the list goes on, but I think how I deal with them is much like anyone else deals with them, is if you really value or believe in this work, you know, you kind of have to brush it off, right? And keep moving. Yeah. And surround yourself with people who understand the value of that work.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll end with our fun question. What is your favorite chemical element? And then we'll wrap that up. That's where I like to end on a fun note.
My favorite element is nitrogen. Because I make nitrogen heterocycles, and also because we all know they'll add about a year to your PhD work. So I like to make myself miserable. In other words. But yeah, I just love nitrogen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andre. It's been a pleasure having you on today. And we'll see everyone next month for our next episode.
Thank you for having me.